like in general, like with anything in life, right? If you can learn from someone else's experiences and their mistakes without having to repeat them yourself, you're going to be much better off, right? And in Sikhi, right? I mean, we believe in this idea of the guru. Sikhi was founded in the 15th century by Guru Nanak, who was the first guru, and the guru is someone who takes you from darkness to light.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason you follow someone on that path is because they've done it before, right? And they can make sure you can get there. So from a mentorship perspective, or having a coach, I think it's really important. Whether it's a friend, it's an industry mentor.
Right. One more episode. I am so excited about this one because this is by far the one that I waited most. This is with none other than my friend, my brother, Prabhjot, and we have known each other for so long, and I have seen him turn from a social activist into a brilliant entrepreneur, and he was before that also, but in my eyes, I look up to him for a lot of things. When I need a wisdom, whether it's spiritual, whether it's business, whether it's something to do with social activism, I look up to this man, and I'm so happy to have him on the show and share it with you guys. So Prabhjot, welcome, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, brother. I'm looking forward to this podcast.
All right, good. So we'll get right into it because Prabhjot has a lot of busy schedule ahead. So let's get started with you sharing about your journey, how you started from somebody who started as everybody does from the normal employee and then transitioning into entrepreneur journey.
Yeah, well, I think it's been a lifelong journey for me. Like I've always, I think, been a generalist, which means that I'm not really good at any one thing, but I sort of a jack of all trades in many regards, which is a skill set you really need to have as an entrepreneur, right? Because in the morning you could be negotiating large contracts with someone in procurement, and in the afternoon you might be taking out the garbage, right? So you've got to be able to span the gambit. And for me, the journey kind of started shortly after college. Out of college, I went to Boston University, did a degree in computer systems engineering, and out of college, I joined Citigroup. They had this management associate program, which John Reed, who was CEO at that time of Citigroup, had come out of that program. Mm. So it was a pretty prestigious, well-regarded, well-funded program where they took people for 9 months at a time and rotated them to different parts of the bank and gave us lots and lots of training of how the banking world works. They taught us a lot of the soft skills that you need to kind of be successful. And then the idea is you do this for 2 or 3 years, and then you come out as a management position in the bank. Mm. So that it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I did it for about 9 months because it felt like the pace was really slow. And at that time, there was a company out in California that had just raised their funding round, and they were kind of pre-revenue. It was about 15 people. And they didn't have anyone on the East Coast. I live in New Jersey at that time. So, recruiter contacted me, and as they say, the rest is history. I'd never been to California. I flew out to the Bay Area, really fell in love with the team. And I got to kind of see the journey from 15 people to about 250 people and, being kind of almost pre-revenue to $60 million, in revenue. And then, and then we were acquired by a big company. I got to have a role as sort of running marketing for for computer associates for the team that part of. So that for me was really a transformational experience because I got to learn so much, and we did so many things right, and a lot of things we didn't do so right, but I learned from all of that.
And how was your transition? So you grew up, you mentioned, in the East Coast, right? And then moving to Bay Area, were there cultural differences? In terms of the work itself, I know when I moved to US, I moved to US, New Jersey, and then I moved to Bay Area. I saw a lot of difference. How was your experience?
Yeah, I didn't move to the Bay Area, first probably till 10 years after I joined that company. But I got to travel the world, with Wiley. And for me, that was great because meeting customers, just sort of interacting with different kinds of people, understanding sort of what their issues were and how to solve those issues was really a foundational experience for me. And while I was on the East Coast, the other, I think, formative experience from an entrepreneurship perspective was 9/11, right? So after 9/11, Manpreet and I are both Sikhs. We follow the Sikh faith, and Sikhs were attacked right after 9/11 across the country.
Yeah,
and we'd been in the U.S. for 100 years, but people didn't really understand who Sikhs were. And, we faced hate crimes, employment discrimination, all kinds of issues. And I actually took some time off from Wiley right after 9/11 and helped set up an organization called the Sikh Coalition, right? Which was really my first startup in many ways, right? Because we started, as a ragtag group of volunteers. And the coalition today, is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit, employs dozens of people and contractors, and has over the last 20 years, because it's been 20 years since 9/11, really worked to help shape policy, defend the rights of Sikhs and other minorities in the U.S. And getting that going from an idea phase to hiring the first employees to really helping institutionalize that really was an entrepreneurial journey, right? So I learned so much in that experience that I brought with me to my private sector entrepreneurship exploits.
Yeah, when 9/11 happened, like I just moved to US a month ago, so then 9/11 happened. All the dreams that I had with, companies gonna just embrace me and with open arms, and I'm gonna be one of those engineers there. They all went like tanked, and it was interesting change in the dynamics overnight, like how people started to see you, because prior to 9/11, I didn't even know who Bin Laden was. I know it's just going a little bit off track, but it's shifted very quickly. Like you were almost like a target because of people were not aware of what different cultures were turban. If you wore a turban, you were just a target, and so that was an interesting time. So
no, it was an insane time because you had people from Middle Eastern descent being targeted, Sikhs were being targeted, Latinos that looked Middle Eastern were being targeted.
Yeah.
So it was very unfortunate, and and thankfully we were able to sort of mobilize the Sikh community.
Yeah.
Right. But coming back to sort of entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship in this case, the building blocks were very similar, right? And we very much ran the coalition from the early days in a results driven perspective, where we had objectives, we were making sure we were meeting the objectives. We had to fundraise just like you do in the private sector, right? And of course, those funds get deployed differently, and there's different measurements of success. But at a fundamental level, it was exactly the same.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just so for knowledge of the audience, your background, like your family didn't come from business, or did they? Like, were they, your parents, were they in the job market, or 9 to 5, or whether they had the business experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think entrepreneurship sort of runs in the blood, and as does sort of displacement, right? My grandfather and grandmom on my dad's side, lived in Pakistan, right? And during the partition, they 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 had left everything and walked across the border to Punjab. And my dad was born on the border in September of '47, right? And my grandfather had to start all over again, right? My grandparents went through similar displacement on my mom's side in terms of having to start all over again, right? And then after 1984 and the tax against six in India, we migrated to the U.S. Right, my parents did, and kind of started all over again, right, in a very similar fashion. And my dad was he's a successful entrepreneur. I've learned so much from him in terms of coming into a new country where he was 40 years old when he uprooted his family and literally started all over again, right? And my mom and dad kind of did that, and I think I and my siblings have always sort of really appreciated them making that sacrifice, right? Because they did it for us, right? And I think for me that sort of fuels my desire to also sort of give back for the greater good.
Amazing. That, and just so interestingly, my father was 2 days old when my grandfather, immigrated or moved from Pakistan to India at that time. So amazing. Yeah. So moving from your, transitioning from your background of marketing, which is your former strength, and I know you humbly said you're a journalist, but that was your strength, that you took people and, I guess being people's person. What were some of the things that you were take away as a person who was a 9-to-5er to transition into entrepreneurship that helped you, become and do things the way you are doing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to become, in the early days, expert in a lot of things, right? As you're sort of getting started. Certainly, managing people and having that experience of sort of making sure that you can manage things and get them from inception to delivery. All of those skills are necessary when you're just starting out. But there's a lot of things that you may never have done before, right? So like fundraising, right? For instance, fundraising, from venture capital, knocking on doors on Sand Hill Road, right? That in itself is a skill and an art, right? That has to be developed over time. And it certainly was for me, right? To sort of start with for Pyze, we started with angel investors in the early days, and then we brought on kind of institutional capital with VCs, and and then that's and you've got to sort of learn also how to leverage your investors so that they can help you beyond just the capital, right? Because and that's where we talk about sort of smart money and not so smart money, right? Because smart money can help open up doors. They've got industry experience. And then I think the other critical thing about investors is, it's a 10-year journey, right? That you're signing up for when you bring someone on your cap table, right? As an entrepreneur. So you've got to make sure that you're aligned and you've got people who are going to be with you for the long run, and through the ups and downs, right? Because you've got good weather investors and not so good, and people who are there who really believe in what you're doing and are going to be with you for the long haul.
That's brilliant. So when somebody is starting fresh into entrepreneurial journey, or if somebody aspiring, how important it is to have somebody or a mentor or an example who has already walked, like do you see any importance, or is it okay to just go and learn?
No, like in general, like with anything in life, right? If you can learn from someone else's experiences and their mistakes without having to repeat them yourself, you're going to be much better off, right? And in Sikhi, right? I mean, we believe in this idea of the guru. Sikhi was founded in the 15th century by Guru Nanak, who was the first guru, and the guru is someone who takes you from darkness to light.
Yeah.
Right. That and the reason you follow someone on that path is because they've done it before, right? And they can make sure you can get there. So from a mentorship perspective, or having a coach, I think it's really important. Whether it's a friend, it's an industry mentor, it's an investor. It's really, really important to have someone who's done these types of things that you're going to have to do, or someone on your team, right, that has that experience. So, how do you negotiate a term sheet, right? Like all of these things are, well, if you're doing something for the first time and you've got someone across the table who's done it 500 times, well, you're not going to be evenly matched. So you definitely need someone on your corner who can help you. And that's just one example, but I think it applies to everything, right? Hiring, firing, negotiating customer agreements, right? Making sure customers are successful, getting real estate, like all these things are things that you have to do. And in the early days, it's you as the entrepreneur who's going to primarily be driving all of them. So, the deeper the bench of people who can support you, the more successful you're going to be.
Yeah, amazing. Think about all the 1,000 things as early days in your entrepreneur journey you have to do. It almost overwhelms you, right? Like, okay, I need to do this, and especially the things that you consider yourself not to be good at, or things that you may have avoided for one reason or another. So, what are some of the things, if somebody is thinking and is getting overwhelmed, can do to sort of break down and come up with a plan that makes it not easier, but a little bit simpler to execute?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it's always situational, right? Depending on kind of what you're against, and it's a moving target, right? So the things that you focus on in the first year are going to be different than the first, second, and third, and fourth, right, year. And but in general, in my mind, this is a psychological game.
Yeah.
Right. Entrepreneurship is completely psychological. It's in your head, and you can either sort of succumb to the challenges, and when things go sideways, and you can you of course want to be in a growing from to the right and to the top, but there's lots of valleys and peaks that happen along the way in reality, right? So when that's the situation, you've got to really kind of take a step back, right, and reevaluate, right? Why are you doing this, right? What is the core motivation that keeps you going, right? That keeps me going, and if that's and so once you are centered on that, then I think it's easier to sort of segment things out in terms of, okay, what are the issues that we need to tackle now? And, what are the resources that I have available that, we can deploy towards those issues? Or what resources do I need? Right. Who do I know who can help me with this particular problem? Right. And I've had lots of times in the early days when we're negotiating a large business contract, and I felt like, oh, I'm a little bit out of my depth here. So I'll call up friends and people who I've known that that are good at that particular thing, and I'll get advice, and you talk to 3 or 4 people, you can then have enough competence to probably move the ball forward, right? And eventually you hire for that function, right? Like hiring, in my mind, you want to hire people who can do something 10 times better than you can.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's how I approach it, right? From at least a senior management team, where if I have to hire someone, then I have to coach them and, help them grow. That's fine for junior employees and mid-level managers. Yeah. But if we're hiring someone on the exec team, for that function, I'd expect them to be, 10x better than me.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's a high bar.
Yeah.
But, but thankfully, because I'm a generalist, it's not that high of a bar for me.
No, there is so much golden right there. Like, first thing, asking for help, that is great. Then hiring to fill the gaps that you have personally, or, hiring the people who are more capable is amazing. Advice. A lot of people I've seen in my career in the companies that I've worked with or the customers, a lot of times these leadership positions, people are not hiring people who are more capable because out of insecurity, and then you wonder that it never grows and just gets stuck. So that's I think a brilliant advice. You have had worked on different enterprises, or from social enterprise, and you had Pyze, and now it's Pixatel, if I'm pronouncing it properly. What are some of the things that are different from your early days that you did that you're no longer there, whether it's because of the times we are in, whether you have the lessons you have learned through your journey? What are some of the things that are different today?
Yeah, I think so. What I've learned from my experiences, certainly with the early days of the coalition, the Pixel was a social enterprise I did right after I left Computer Associates. But I've been very focused on Pyze and growing this business for several years. And I think along this journey, the couple of lessons that I've actually taken away is that you've got to be really hands-on to ensure success, right? It's like as businesses grow, people think, oh, you can be more hands-off. You actually have to be more hands-on and more involved in the details to make sure that you're going to be successful, and the people that you're relying on are going to be successful. And that relates to sort of, I think I now have the ability to hire better than I did, 10 years ago. And I think, and I'm continuing to kind of get good at lessons, or, humbling lessons in that regard even now, right? Because there's always something to learn in terms of making the right decisions, because you don't have a lot of data, right, to evaluate someone, right? Yeah. So people are going to give you great references, and of course they're going to tell you they can do what you want them to do, right? So being able to sort of parse all of that information and kind of, and also ask the right questions, right? Yeah. And then once they're on board, I think one of the other key lessons that I've learned both for myself and for my teams is setting really crystal clear goals of what needs to be accomplished when, right? Because we're in a business which we're growing fast, we're moving fast, we're breaking things, we're changing what the goals need to be, and that's all well and good, right? That's all well and good, but you've got to kind of have an understanding of what those goals are, and make sure that everyone understands what we're driving towards. And if those goals change, then broadcast that loudly and communicate that often, and to make sure that everyone's aligned about what's the goalpost and where we're heading.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to your earlier point about why are you doing business, and then being clear about your vision, but also as you pivot, making it clear to your people, because otherwise they will get lost and confused. So I've seen a lot of companies that do well and they are big, and they have seen the other side of it where communication just happens by the means of somebody realizing, okay, it has happened, not by actually communicating. So I think that's a brilliant advice for any leader to make sure their communication is there, good and clear. Do you see any difference between pre-COVID and post-COVID in terms of the business, the realities, and how things are moving now?
Yeah, so for sure, there's been. I think COVID has changed the business landscape in a number of significant ways, right? Like I think every company probably has been impacted and has to sort of rethink what what they do and the relevance of what they do to today's society, right? Because like office spaces have gone away, companies are reevaluating their business models, and for Pyze, we help organizations optimize their business processes, right? We help people baseline the effectiveness of their business processes, whether it's fraud detection or claim management or quote to cash, right? Whatever business process that a company is implementing, we provide the ability to kind of measure that and then improve that, right? Identify where there's inefficiencies, where there's friction points as it relates to the process, workflows, employees. And what we've seen with our customers is as they've had to kind of rejigger their business process or introduce new capabilities to their customers, they've all been sort of struggling with, okay, how do we ensure that we're delivering the maximum results possible, right, to our customers? And if someone isn't doing that today, especially leveraging technology to do that, they're not setting themselves up for success, right? Because like one big thing that COVID has done is it's, technology and business have always kind of been partners, or people have thought of technology as serving the business. Yeah. When you take the physical space out of the equation and, all of the interactions are happening over the web or Zoom or what have you, technology is the business. Yeah. Right. So if you're not setting your business up to leverage the benefits that you can gain from technology in terms of automation and being able to sort of quickly introduce new services for your customers, you're not really positioned for success. And we've seen companies big and small all sort of really having this kind of business-driven case for modernizing their entire technology infrastructure and software stacks and applications to just that, right? So I think that's kind of been one big business trend that I've definitely noticed across the board with our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. People or companies have to pivot and reevaluate what they were doing pre-COVID because it's no longer valid. Everybody has different expectations, and so that's a good tool. Since you talked about company and culture and hiring, one of the things I heard from Gary Vee talks a lot about it is that he hires fast and fires even faster. Like he doesn't want to waste time in having processes that takes too long to hire and then the processes that takes too long to fire. Is there a philosophy or any similar thought process that you follow when you have people working for you?
Yeah, I mean, so the conventional wisdom, right, is like hire slow, fire fast, right? But given that we have to grow so quickly, we wind up hiring fast.
Yeah,
that's just and the issue with hiring fast is you don't get the opportunity to vet the person as well as you would if you're hiring slow. Yeah. Right. So in many regards, I think the conventional wisdom is probably right, even though we may not follow it, that you really want to vet someone, because when you hire someone, you are you're making a bet on them, right? You're saying, hey, I believe this person is going to help me do whatever job it is that I'm hiring them for. And once you do that, right, you I think have a fundamental responsibility to try to make sure that that person is successful, because otherwise you shouldn't have hired them in the first place, right? Because when you fire someone, it's one of the worst things that you can do, right, to someone, because at least in the short term, right, because it impacts them psychologically, impacts their morale, it impacts their family, right? It's not fun to be fired.
Yeah.
So when I'm a big believer in when I hire someone and I realize that, okay, they're not a fit or they're not being successful in what they're doing, to me, it's really important to communicate that very clearly, crisply, quickly, and then put together a plan. And it's not an extended point in time, right? It's sort of like, look, this is what we need to do in the next 2 weeks. This is what we need to do in the next 4 weeks. And we're going to evaluate on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And, and either I see a change in that first week, right? Or that person typically doesn't last a month.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you have that conversation that this is not working, it's a serious conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't do that lightly. So I think you've got to have a path towards either course correcting or, an exit plan for that person, so that they understand that, like they didn't just wake up one day and, called in with HR and said, hey, thanks for your service. So this is your last day. I don't think that's not helpful for anyone. And that's not a culture that we want to have within a company either.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think, fighting can be a bad experience, but also if you're not growing, if you're not in the right place, it's probably the right thing for both the company and the candidate. But it has to be, just like you said, it has to be there needs to be an effort of course correction. There needs to be clear communication. And a lot of companies miss that. Like they are just, okay, it's not working, but they don't take time to make the person understand what is not working, and then that sort of leaves a bad taste in both person and whoever is firing. So I think that's a good advice as somebody is building the culture of organization, to keep in mind that at the end of the day, the other side person sitting is also a person. So they still have mind and heart, and they can take things to wrong. In terms of when people work, when I grew up, or in my time as an employee, I've seen companies that I worked with, they invest a lot in when it comes to hard skills, right? If you're a good engineer, they will want to make you the best engineer you are there. Like in the skills, they'll give you technology, they'll give you people, or they'll give you resources. Obviously, you still have to put time to get there, but they don't invest a lot of times into soft skills. And what I mean by that, like as a programmer, if I'm a very good programmer, the next step is to become lead. And they push you to become lead, but they don't give you skills. They don't train you for that. They give you another lead who has done maybe well, but you almost learn by making the mistakes, but not having the right direction, the right tools that allow you to become successful and a lot easier. If you expect somebody to be in a lead or a manager position, if you have those tools to help them do it, then it gets better. How do you see in your career as a employee and now as an entrepreneur giving jobs, the balance or the need or importance of having soft skills versus hard skills?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And like, as you're just mentioning that, right, I was thinking back to my Wiley days, right, early in my career, where I started interacting with customers, right, selling to customers, engaging with customers. And I certainly didn't have those soft skills at that time, right? So I recall, my manager at that time, encouraging me to go out and find classes that could help me, right? So I signed up for classes in marketing, which I started to kind of develop an acumen for. I signed up for classes on presenting, right? One of those that I remember was like a presentation class where they tape us and play back what we were doing, and showed us that, look, a lot of these skills can be developed, right? Like if you look at the first year of Bill Clinton's term and him giving speeches versus 80 years later and him giving speeches, it's night and day, right? And they actually showed us that video, right? And of sort of doing that comparison, and I had of course this can be done, right? So I think this is something that companies should invest in, and if you're not investing in helping your technical teams develop these soft skills, both at an intra-company level and also at an inter-company level, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Because as companies grow, in order to sort of not develop silos of here's engineering and here's product management and here's sales and here's professional services and accounting, you've got to have people who are able to really talk the same talk, right? And these soft skills are extremely important in creating a cohesive unit. And then if you can do that within the company, well, then you can definitely do that with your customers, right, as well. And that leads to growth. It leads to happier employees, happier customers across the board.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I think as much as this is your employer's responsibility, that they should be doing it if they really are, focused on employee growth and company growth. Those leaders are always thinking about ways to expand their people. But if you're in a company that is not investing, then that doesn't mean that's the end. You have to take responsibility to educate yourself. That's the only way you can get ahead. Otherwise, you will still be in that hamster wheel. And a lot of times, people in technical backgrounds get stuck because of this reason, because they never either knowingly don't do it, or either they don't even know that they can go and get better. And so I think that's an important point. Coming to the market, right? What kind of jobs, since it's all changing now, right, in tech and everything, what do you see on the horizon? How is the industry changing in the technology space? Are there some things that you see that are going to become like almost, normal for everybody day to day, that these are trends that they're going to adhere to, grow and live? We have to live with those trends.
Right. Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of things that are coming to the forefront and have been fueled by COVID. Yes, certainly automation is one of those things, right? We're seeing a big focus on automation in terms of creating efficiencies, right? And a lot of that's been driven by the need to kind of do workforce enablement, right? Because everyone's remote and virtual. But also to sort of just create overall efficiencies in existing processes. But in order to know what to automate, right, you've got to be able to understand what the lay of the land is, right? What are the dynamics of where there's friction points, and we're seeing process mining, which is really what Pyze does, become something that's becoming a fundamental part of the organizational stack of services and capabilities to help people understand, well, okay, here's an issue that I have because it takes too long to do this particular step in the process. Once you understand that, now you can sort of make decisions on, well, do I need to do, RPA, or do we need to, re-architect the workflow or the process, or, is it a training issue for my employees? So these are kind of, I think there's a lot of trends, and specifically around how AI ML is sort of being used to drive automation in particular. But yeah, for sure, I think a lot of these impacts of COVID are here to stay, and really are going to accelerate sort of these automation capabilities moving forward.
All right, brilliant. I know our time is tight, so I'm gonna ask 2 more questions, and then I'll let you go. So being an entrepreneur journey, or being in this journey where I'm starting from scratch and not having or having a different mindset than an employee, where you have to, just like you said, you have to become generalist, and you need to learn every process yourself to understand and appreciate it. Often what happens is people only see the results like 10 years later. Like people see 10 years later of Prabhjot when he has done successful in business, but they don't see all the valleys that come in, and which are natural part. What are some of the obstacles that you had to overcome to get where you are? Just so people can see it wasn't like on day one, Prabhjot was able to bring up these companies and do these things.
Yeah. Well, like every company is an overnight success 10 years later, right? Or 20 years later. And I think that's a really good point that you're making. It's a journey. And people sort of only see the end results, or want to see the end results, because that's we all want the overnight unicorn story, right? Like, who doesn't like that? But it's like I said, there's a lot of trials and tribulations that anyone who gets to a point of building a successful business has to go through. There's just whether it's people issues, it's sort of a lot of people kind of wind up mortgaging their houses, right, to kind of support the business. I certainly invested in the business myself in the early days because to me, I was betting on myself.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if there's anyone that you want to bet on, it's yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, well, then you should be an entrepreneur, right? So we probably don't have all the time to get into all of that. It's probably a podcast on itself in terms of all the things that I messed up on along the way, and there's a lot of those. But I think the one thing that I've discovered is it's really about the people that you work with, right? And if we have people who complement us, who are authentic and who have grit, you can really move mountains, right? I mean, and those are the qualities that I look for in people that I'm hiring, and people I want to work with, even in customers, right, that I want to do business with, because there's always ups and downs, right? And you want people with you on your team who are going to be not shaken by the first downward fall. Right. So that's kind of the biggest lesson that I've learned over the years, that it's always about people. And I need to make sure that I have the right people that are working with me to help me grow and help the business grow.
Yeah. And only, fortunately or unfortunately, you can only find about the people by working with people. There's no shortcut. Like, you can do all the due diligence in the interviews and hiring and everything, but after some point, it's just work through.
Absolutely, and this is why I love kind of doing these side projects with you, and kind of chatting with you, and working with you, because I always learn so much, and it's and I enjoy it, right? Like, this has been great, and hopefully we do this again soon. But at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? The rest are details, as they say.
Yes. Okay, last question. Actually, let me first ask, before I ask the last question, how do people find more about Pyze and about you, how can people connect with you to learn more about Pyze and what
Yeah,
you do?
certainly check out Pyze.com. That's Pyze.com. That's our site. You can kind of get more information, request a demo. Drop me a note on Twitter, PSingSF, or Pyze Inc.
Yeah.
on Twitter. But certainly, you could reach out to Manpreet, who can connect you with me directly. But check out our website, and if you think Pyze could be helpful in helping to baseline and improving operational excellence for your business, and that's what we're really about. We're all about helping drive operational excellence, regardless of what your business is, right? Whether you're a financial institution, you're a tech startup, you're a healthcare company, manufacturing company, we help identify, where are there issues, whether it's your supply chain or a customer service process. We can help you improve that and drive better margins and better customer satisfaction.
Amazing. And I'll put those links in the episode details so people can reach you. So the last question is that, if somebody who is not satisfied with the work wherever they are, whatever they are doing, whether it's work, whether it's, just the income, whether it's they're just not happy with what they do, and they want to do, get into their entrepreneur side of the things, what advice would you give them to, what can they do to just get started?
Yeah, so the biggest advice I would give is to find out what you're passionate about. Right. That's really the first thing that anyone who wants to sort of quit their job and go do something else, and whether it's you want to freelance, you want to become a contractor, you want to start the next Facebook, right? Whatever it is, make sure that you're passionate about what you're doing, and then develop a plan to get there, right? And it's going to be have no doubt that you should plan for 24 to 36 month journey before you start seeing real results, right? And you can figure out where along the way you want to quit your job to be all in, right? But it's very rare that anything is a overnight success, and by overnight I mean 12 months, right? Yeah. Especially in SaaS, right? You getting to product market fit, finding the first customers, generating revenue from the first 5 or 10 or 20 customers is something that you're going to need to do before you can raise real money to sort of start growing and the business. So if you're not passionate about it, you're going to fizzle out, right? Or you're going to say, hey, this is too tough. So find something you're passionate about. Make sure you can make that commitment of 24, 36 months, and then get the right team together to go and execute on it. And if you've got those things, I think you'd be successful. And certainly if I'm able to help, I'm happy to. So feel free to reach out to me. I can share that.
Thank you so much, Prabhjot, for this time. I had so much to learn. I mean, I wish I was taking notes, but I have the video. I can go back, and I have you. But
you're doing amazing, Manpreet, in terms of how you started. So I'm very kind of excited to kind of follow closely and see how the journey goes. And,
right.
Yeah, so I'm there with you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did and got some valuable nuggets out of it. If you liked it, there are other shows you can watch. They're exactly what you need. And I ask you to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the show. Really, I want to hear from you firsthand, what you felt, what you liked, what you didn't like. So thank you, and see you around.